Boy, listening to you talk, I keep thinking it must be so strange to have such a significant event in your life be the subject of rock lore. And so, like, everybody knows the story, whether it's true or not. Everybody thinks they know the story, but it actually happened to you, and it was, I'm sure, very painful when it did happen.
Well, it's one of those things. I mean, everyone knows the story or thinks they know the story. All you can do is put your, particular perspective of it. At the end of the day, I leave it up to people's, their own decision. They are the ones to make the decision, whether Ringo's a better drummer than me, whether I fitted into the band, whether I was antisocial. Everyone has their own opinion. There's most probably 2 or 3 people alive today who know the definitive reason. Now, if it ever comes out before we ever leave this planet, then fine, but to me, as it stands at this present moment in time, doesn't really worry me, to be quite honest. I've lived my life without knowing the definitive reason. I most probably live the rest of it without knowing the definitive reason. And it may be one of these occasions where it becomes the same as the mystery of the pharaohs. It might or become one of the enigmas of rock and roll history. I don't know, and at this present moment in time, it really doesn't worry me too much. I'm enjoying myself, and I've got a lot of things which I compensate myself for.
So was it Brian Epstein who actually told you were out?
It was, yeah. I mean, but I suppose in hindsight, when you look at it, and from what I've heard, and it was very much a case of the boys weren't at the dismissal, and by the boys I mean John, George and Paul. Brian was the manager, and it was very much a case of, Brian, you're the manager, you are the one who is going to tell Pete that he's out the band.
And I've read you haven't spoken to the Beatles since that day. Is that true?
That's quite true, yes. It's, a lot of people turn around and say that there must be animosity, the fact that no one's picked the phone up and, contacted one another or tried to, resolve our differences. At the end of the day, there's no differences as far as I'm concerned. The door's always been open, Picking the phone up, a lot of people don't realize how difficult that is in this particular business. What they've got to realize is the fact that the Beatles were very quickly, after my dismissal, well on their way to becoming the icons in the music industry. And, the Beatle empire, the NEMS empire, which later became the Apple organization, was vastly growing and quickly growing. And it didn't matter who you were, unless they wanted to speak to you, you wouldn't get through to them. Consequently, knowing this, and, the futility of trying to resolve it, you concentrate and persevere with your own career, and consequently, as a result of that, your lives draw apart. But life is, plays funny tricks, and, maybe it's karma, maybe the tapestry, I don't know, but I have a strange feeling that Paul and I will meet up again one of these days.
What was it like for you to watch the Beatles become the most famous band in the world? And you had been with them and weren't any longer.
Interesting, if I could put it that way, and mystifying as well. I suppose the heartache came when the first record, Love Me Do, went into the charts. The mercurial rise and watching them become the biggest phenomenon in the music industry was something which I don't think anyone expected. So that was like total fantasy. But the heartache for me was initially, with Love Me Do, because that was the belief that we had in the band that we could break through into the English charts. And lo and behold, with their first record, the first release on a major English label, that was the success we believed in. So the rest of it, was a little bit pipe dream.
What have you done for a living over the years?
Ooh, let me see. Rock musician for 8 years, up till 1968. And then I worked in a bakery for 12 months, slicing bread and loading wagons. And then I had the offer to join the civil service in England. And I stayed with them for about 20 years. Worked my way through the normal promotional channels. Started off finding people jobs and ended up as training manager for the northwest of England, rehabilitating people and setting programs up for them. And then in 1988, I did a one-off show in Liverpool, which I thought was going to be a total one-off show, which meant that I was getting back on stage again and playing drums. And lo and behold, that was the turning point for me to go back into music again. And consequently, as a result of that, I've reformed the Pete Best Band, and we're touring the world and doing all the silly things which musicians do at the present moment.
So you're still living in Liverpool?
I'm still in Liverpool, yeah.
And do you live in the place that the Casbah was in the basement?
I used to, for many, many years. I don't now. But what we have there now is that the Casbah is still there. It will be resurrected from the ashes next year. It will go back on the tourist trail, and it will be reopened to the public again. But we have our offices there, and we have a recording studio which is being built on the next floor above it. So, that is our workplace. Hayman's Green has now become our, the workplace for us.
I have to ask you something about your mother. Your mother grew up in India. Her father was in the British Army and was stationed in India. When she met your father, who was from Liverpool, they met in India and then moved to Liverpool.
Yeah.
And your mother loved singing, and I guess at some point she even considered being a singer. So when she opened up the club in the basement of your house, and all of these like great Mersey beat bands were playing there, what was it like to have a mother who was like so hip and so in tune with this music that you loved, with music that was considered very rebellious by most parents, but your mother, she was opening up a club for performing it.
It was great. I mean, it was wonderful to have a mother who was thinking that way. I mean, she was young at heart. She realised what the kids wanted. She was different. Even Paul turned around and said, there aren't many women in the world like Mo, as she affectionately used to be known as. She hated being called Mrs. Best. It was always Mo or Mona. And I suppose it's true, and that rubbed off on people. She was so charismatic. She was forthright. It was a challenge to her. She enjoyed music. It was a privilege for her to actually accommodate young children, and given this platform to actually have live music played in the basement of her home. And she enjoyed the fact that it was being played in such a fashion that it was this music which was going to change the world many, many years afterwards.
John Lennon certainly had a lot of issues with with his mother. What was his reaction to your mother?
He loved her. I mean, it was great because I suppose in the early days, when John and I used to come back to the Casbah, and we'd raid the fridge and, the crisps and the chips and all the other bits and pieces and, hide away upstairs in the sitting room and play records till about 4 o'clock in the morning. It was one of those things. He loved the informality, and plus the fact that you've got to remember because at that time Mo used to talk to them, and she was quite open, and she basically showed John some medals of her grandfathers, and of course when Sergeant Pepper was being put together many, many years afterwards, John remembered that, and he came back and asked Mona if he could borrow those medals, and we're very proud of the fact that he was actually wearing them on Sergeant Pepper, and the only condition that she gave to him was that basically, John, yes, you can have the medals, but make sure, you do return them to me. They were my father's, and I'm very proud of those. And consequently, as a result of that, he did, So, I think he loved Mona deep down inside.
Well, Pete Best, I want to thank you so much for talking with us.
It's been my pleasure, believe you me.
Pete Best's new book is called The Beatles, The True Beginnings.